The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. Book 4, Taran Wanderer. Chapter 2, Cantrev Cadiffor. The two companions left the marshes of Morva, pressing southeastward to the valley Cantrevs along the Ystrad River, for Taran had decided to break his journey at Cadiffor, fortress of King Smite, and ask the red-bearded king to refit them with gear sturdier than what they had brought from Caerdalban. From there, Taran told Gurgi, we can only search as the moment guides us. My poor tender head is full of questions. He sighed, and with a wry and regretful smile. But of plans, alas, none at all. With the marshes many day behind, the two companions crossed the borders of Cadiffor, Smite's realm, and largest of the valley Cantrevs. The countryside had long since changed from gray moors to green meadows and pleasantly wooded lands, with farmholds nestled in the clearings. Though Gurgi eyed the dales longingly, sniffing the smoke of cook fires wafting from the cottage chimneys, Taran did not turn from the path he had chosen. But keeping a brisk pace, another 3 days of travel would bring them to Cadiffor. A little before sundown, seeing the clouds growing heavy and dark, Taran halted to find shelter in a pine grove. He had scarcely dismounted, and Gurgi had only begun to unlash the saddlebags, when a band of horsemen cantered into the grove. Taran spun around and drew his blade. Gurgi, yelping in alarm, scurried to his master's side. There were 5 riders, well mounted and armed, their rough-bearded faces sun-blackened, their bearing that of men long used to the saddle. The colors they wore were not those of the house of Smite, and Taran guessed that the horsemen to be warriors in the service of one of Smite's liegemen.
Put up your blade,
commanded the leading rider, nevertheless drawing his own, reining up before the wayfarers and glancing scornfully at them.
Who are you? Who do you serve?
They're outlaws, cried another. Strike them down.
They look more like scarecrows than outlaws, replied the leader.
I take them for a pair of curls who've run away from their master.
Taran lowered his sword, but did not sheath it. I am Taran, assistant pig keeper.
Where then are your pigs? Cried the first rider with a coarse laugh. And why are you not keeping them?
He gestured with a thumb toward Gurgi.
Oh, will you tell me this? This sorry thing is one of your charges.
He is no piggy,
indignantly retorted Gurgi.
No piggy at all. He is Gurgi, bold and clever to serve kindly master.
The creature's outburst brought only more laughter from the horsemen. But now the first rider spied Melendless.
Your steed is above your station, pig keeper, he said. How do you come by it?
Melendless is mine by right, Taran replied sharply. A gift of Gwydion, Prince of Dawn.
Lord Gwydion, cried the warrior. Given? Stolen from him, rather, he jeered. Have a care. Your lies will cost you a beating.
I tell no lie and seek no quarrel, Taran answered. We journey in peace to King Smite's castle.
Smite needs no pig keeper, one of the warriors broke in. Nor do we, said the first rider. He swung around to his fellows. What say you? Shall we take his horse or his head, or both?
Lord Gorion will welcome a fresh mount and reward us all the more for this one, answered a rider. But the head of a pig keeper serves no use, not even to himself.
Well said, and so be it, cried the warrior. Besides, he can better mind his pigs afoot, he added, reaching for the stallion's bridle.
Taran sprang between Melendless and the horseman. Gurgi leaped forward and furiously grappled the rider's leg. The other warriors spurred their mounts, and Taran found himself in the midst of rearing horses, driven from the side of his own steed. He fought to bring up his sword. One of the riders wheeled and drove his mount's flank heavily against Taran, who lost his footing. At the same instant, another of his assailants fletched him a blow that would surely have cost Taran his head had the warrior not struck with the flat of his sword. As it was, Taran fell stunned to the ground, his ears ringing, thoughts spinning, and the horseman seemed to burst into comets before his eyes. He was dimly aware of Gurgi frantically yelling, of Melendless whinnying, and it seemed to him that another figure had joined the fray. By the time he could stagger to his feet, the horsemen had vanished, dragging Melendless with them. Taran, crying out in dismay and anger, stumbled toward the path they had taken. A broad hand grasped his shoulder.
He turned abruptly to see a man in a sleeveless jacket of coarse wool girt with a plaited rope. His bare arms were knotted and sinewy, and his back bent, though less by years than by labor. A shock of gray, uncropped hair hung about a face that was stern but not unkind.
Hold, hold, the man said. You'll not overtake them now. Your horse will come to no ill. The henchmen of Lord Gorion treat steeds better than strangers.
He patted the oaken staff he carried.
2 of Gorion's border band will have heads to mend, but so will you from the look of you.
He picked up a sack and slung it over his shoulder.
I am Edan, son of Eden, he said. Come, both of you. My farm is no distance.
Without Melendless, my quest will fail, Taran cried. I must find... He stopped short. The warrior's mockery still rankled him, and he was reluctant to tell more than need be, even to this man who had befriended him. But the farmer showed no interest in questioning him.
What you seek,
replied Adan,
is more your business than mine. I saw 5 set upon 2 and only put some fairness in the match. Will you heal your hurt? Then follow me.
So saying, the farmer set off down the hillside, Taran and Gurgi behind him. Gurgi turned often to shake his fist in the direction of the departed horseman, while Taran trudged along the darkening path, speaking not a word, deep in despair over Melendless, and thinking bitterly that in his quest he had done no more than lose his horse and gained a broken head. His bones ached, his muscles throbbed. To worsen matters, the clouds had thickened. Nightfall brought a pelting rain, and by the time he reached Adan's farmhold, Taran was as drenched and bedraggled as ever he had been in all his life. The dwelling into which Adan led the companions was only a hut of wattle and daub, but Taran was surprised at its snugness and neat furnishings. Never before in all his adventures had he shared hospitality with the farmer folk of Prydain, and he glanced around as wondering as a stranger in a new land. Now that he could look more closely at Adan, he sensed honesty and good nature in the man's weathered face. The farmer gave him a warm grin, and Taran, despite the smart of his wounds, grinned back, feeling indeed that he had come upon a friend. The farm wife, a tall, work-hardened woman with features as lined as her husband's, threw up her hands at the sight of Gurgi, whose dripping, matted hair had gathered a blanket of twigs and pine needles, and cried out at Taran's blood-smeared face. While Adan told of the fray, the woman, Alarka, opened a wooden chest and drew out a sturdy, warm jacket, well worn but lovingly mended, which Taran gratefully took in place of his own sodden garment. Alarka set about mixing a potion of healing herbs, and Adan, meantime, poured onto a table the contents of his sack, haunches of bread, a cheese, and some dried fruit.
You come to small comfort, he said. My land yields little, so I toil part of my days on my neighbors' fields to earn what I cannot grow.
And yet, Taran said, dismayed to learn Adan's plight, I had heard told there was rich soil in the valley Cantrevs.
Was indeed, replied Adan with a dour laugh. In the time of my forefathers, not in mine. As the hill Cantrevs were famed for their long-fleeced sheep, so the valley Cantrevs of Yestrad were known far and wide for the finest oats and barley, and Cantrev Cadiffor itself for wheat bright and heavy as gold. And golden days there must have been in all Prydain.
Adan went on, cutting the bread and cheese into portions and handing them to Taran and Gurgi.
My father's father told a tale already old when it was told to him, of plows that worked of themselves, of scythes that reaped a harvest without even the touch of a man's hand.
So too have I heard, Taran said. But Aran Deathlord stole those treasures, and now they lie unused and hidden deep in the fastness of Anuvan. The farmer nodded.
Aran's hand chokes the life from Prydain. His shadow blights the land. Our toil grows heavier, and all the more because our skills are few. Enchanted tools did Aran steal? Many secrets there were of making the earth yield richly, and of these too the Lord of Anuvan robbed us. Twice in 2 years have my crops failed, Adaon went on, as Taran listened with heartfelt concern. My granary is empty, and the more I must toil for others, the less I may work on my own fields. Even so, my knowledge is too slight. What I most need is locked forever in the treasure hoard of Anuvan.
It is not altogether your skill that lacks, Alarka said, putting a hand on the farmer's knotted shoulder. Before the first planting, the plow ox and cow sickened and died. And the second, her voice lowered, for the second we were without the help of Amran. Taran glanced questioningly at the woman, whose eyes had clouded. She said, Amran, our son. He was of your years, and it is his jacket you wear. He needs it no longer. Winter and summer are alike to him. He sleeps under a burial mound among other fallen warriors. Yes, he is gone, the woman added. He rode with the battle host when they fought off raiders who sought to plunder us. I share your sorrow, Taran said. Then to console her, added, but he died with honor. Your son is a hero. My son is slain, the woman answered sharply. The raiders fought because they were starving, we because we had scarcely more than they, and at the end all had less than when they began. Now, for us, the labor is too great for one pair of hands, even for two. The secrets our Death Lord stole could well serve us. Alas, we cannot regain them.
No matter. Even without the secrets, my harvest will not fail this year, Adan said. All save one of my fields lies fallow, but in this one I have spent all my toil. He looked proudly at Taran. When my wife and I could no longer pull the plow ourselves, I broke the earth with my own hands and sowed it grain by grain. The farmer laughed. Yes, and weeded it blade by blade, as niggling as a grand dame with her favorite patch of herbs. It will not fail. Indeed, it must not, he added, frowning. This season our livelihood hangs on it. Little more was said then, and when the meager meal ended, Taran gladly stretched his aching bones beside the hearth, while Gurgi curled up next to him. Weariness overcame even his despair for Melendez, and with the patter of rain on the thatch and the hiss of the dying embers, Taran soon fell asleep. The companions woke before first light, but Taran found Adan already working in his field. The rain had stopped, leaving the earth fresh and moist. Taran knelt and took up a handful. Adan had spoken the truth. The soil had been tilled with utmost pains, and Taran watched the farmer with growing respect and admiration. The farm could indeed yield richly, and Taran stood a moment looking toward the fallow ground, barren for lack of hands to labor it. With a sigh, he turned quickly away, his thoughts once more on Melendez. How he might regain the silver-maned stallion, Taran could not foresee, but he had determined to make his way to the stronghold of Lord Gorion, where, in Adan's judgment, the warriors had surely taken the animal. Though more than ever anxious over his beloved steed, Taran worked through the morning beside Adan. The farm couple had kept scarcely a morsel of the evening's fare for themselves, and Taran saw no other means to repay them. By midday, however, he dared delay no longer, and made ready to take his leave. Alarka had come to the door of the hut. Like her husband, the woman had asked nothing beyond what little Taran had chosen to tell of his quest. But now she said, Will you still follow your own path? Have you turned from home and kinsmen? What mother's heart longs for her son as I long for mine? Alas, none that I know, Taran answered, folding Amran's jacket and gently putting it in her hands. And none that knows me. You have been well taught in the ways of farming, Adan said. If you seek a place of welcome, you've already found one. Whatever other welcomes I find, may they be as open-hearted as yours, Taran replied. And it was not without regret that he and Gurgi said farewell.